Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tambellini's Open Office Hours. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Chris McNamee, the Vice President of Marketing and Product Strategy with the Tambellini Group. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a couple of things that will allow you to participate in today's event. Right now, what you should see on your screen is a screenshot of the GoToWebinar interface. There are two audio options. One is listen with your computer audio, and the other is call in by phone. To switch between the two options that you have, you can just click on the circle next to your preferred audio option in the audio section of the panel. So you're aware, all of our phone lines are muted today. Before we start, we will let you know that you will have a chance to submit questions to our presenters. You can simply type your question into the questions pane of your control panel. That pane is open for the entire session, and you can submit your questions at any time during the presentation, but we'll address all the questions during the Q&A section at the end of today's presentation. Today, we're joined by a panel of higher education leaders, and they are here to look forward to the planning for the fall 2020 semester and how the transformative changes they've made in the past 2 or 3 years are serving their institutions now. With that, I'd like to welcome and introduce you to our panelists. Today, we have Sharon Pitt, VP of Information Technologies and Chief Information Officer at the University of Delaware.
Hi.
Thanks, Sharon. Jose Rodriguez, CIO of Rhodes College. Hampton Shive, the AVP for Business Services and the CIO of Hinds Community College. And Dave Kiefer, our Vice President of Research for Large Enterprise Systems at the Tambellini Group. And Dave will monitor our panel today. Thank you all again for joining us today. And Dave, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I think we have a really interesting conversation set up for you. So let me set it up a little bit, and then we'll ask to hear from our panelists. We know how crazy the last month and 2 months have been on many, many campuses. We've anecdotally heard a lot about what's happening. Employees are suddenly remote, the dorms are empty, classes are remote, and everything has moved very, very quickly. And I think the bulk of the stories we've heard have been around that sudden movement and sudden adaptation. So we wanted to start to think about, okay, now that some of those things are in place and relatively stable, and I'll say relatively, how are our campuses thinking about how to plan for the fall? So we don't know yet, right, whether students will be able to be on campuses or whether we'll have to teach remotely. We don't know what the reaction of incoming students will be to the situation. And so lots of planning and scenarios are happening on campuses, and we wanted to dig into that a little bit. I will say that that for those institutions who are represented here, this isn't the place for them to announce their plans, but it's a place for us just to talk as a community about what the planning process looks like, and what kinds of assumptions people are looking at, and what kinds of models people are looking at. So that's the first place we want to go. The first thing I want to do is ask each of our panelists to give us just a brief snapshot of the status on your campus of dealing with the pandemic. You know, what's happening with your students and faculty and staff, and kind of where are you at the moment? So I'll turn to Sharon first. If you want to just give us a snapshot of what's happening on your campus.
Sure, and just to give you a little bit of background about University of Delaware, we're a land grant, sea grant, space grant institution, a large research university. So there are a lot of students and faculty and staff that we've been dealing with through this national emergency. I'd say that we started out with our pandemic process on high alert and trying to make decisions, and we ended up moving to the very highest level of our pandemic framework for response when we ended up with the first COVID-19 case on our campus, being the first case in the state of Delaware. Our entire workforce has been away from the university for about 2.5 weeks now, and we actually started our online classes this past Monday. We did a shift spring break. Right now would actually be the time when we should have been on spring break, but we moved it up 2 weeks, extended it a week like many other institutions did. So we're very similar in the sense that many of us decided to move a lot of our courses online and focus on academic continuity to get through the rest of this semester.
Great, thanks. Jose?
Yeah, thank you, David. We, like everyone else, I mean, just we had a pandemic readiness group that discussed these things weekly and then daily. And then it became very apparent while our students were on spring break that we needed to make a decision whether to either let them come back and move out or come back and have some combination of start school and then end. But we decided to have students move out. We still have a good portion of students on campus, maybe about 50 international students and students who could not go home. But like everyone else, we prepared to move all our classes online. We went fully remote with our course catalog on March 23rd after a week or so of preparation and training and planning. It has worked out well, mostly. We're a small private liberal arts college, about 2,000 students and about 200 faculty. All staff are working remotely. We do have the library open. My information services group is both information technology and library merged, but we have to keep the library open, shorter schedule, but for the students that are still here. And I mean, as you queued up for this conversation, the next set of conversations are forward-looking. What will we do about commencement and award ceremonies and other, you know, celebrations? And then, of course, what will we do about the incoming class in the fall and summer school as well? So that's where we're at.
Great, thank you. Hampton?
Hinds Community College is one of 15 community colleges in the state of Mississippi. We're the largest. We have a 4-credit enrollment of about 12,500 and a non-credit enrollment of about 5,000. And we have done a lot of online delivery in the past, and that has helped us tremendously because from a scheduling standpoint, our spring break was the week of, I believe it was March the 9th. And on that Thursday, we announced an extended spring break for the students. We opened the college back up at full capacity from a staffing level on that week, but gave everyone the option of working remotely. I would say maybe 5 to 10% of the staff is actually still on site. Everyone else has shifted to remote work. So we are in the second week right now of being 100% online. And currently, we will open up registration for the summer and the fall next week. And I think that's going to be a really good gauge as to what the level of interest is going to be. I think that's extremely hard for us to predict right now. And that's one of the most significant things that we're waiting to see is those year-over-year numbers to see what the demand is going to be. So I'm sure like everyone else, we're all meeting very regularly, and it has changed the way that we're communicating and working, but feel really good about the commitment level of almost the entire employee base and really proud of our progress in rapidly pivoting. So whatever I could say the next 6 to 8 weeks might be, it'll be wrong, certainly by Monday.
So let's stick with you for this next question. So talk about the process that you as leaders are going through as you await the numbers to come in, and kind of what are the scenarios you're thinking about? What's the planning cycle look like? How many scenarios you're planning for? Talk us through a little bit about what your planning process looks like right now.
Well, I think we're still attempting to develop that. And so as a part of that, one of the things we're really looking at is something we've been studying for quite some time. And it's sort of this abstract concept of what is the value proposition of the college? You know, under normal conditions, why is someone choosing to come to Hinds? And we've been looking really closely at that for years. And we've been making adjustments toward where we think the business model needs to evolve. And so really what we believe is happening right now is an extraordinary acceleration of what we really thought was inevitable over the next 5 to 10 years. And so, you know, in our case, we're going to have to look really, really closely at all of our programs. We're going to have to look closely at the enrollment around them. We're going to have to look closely at the cost structure around those programs, because what worked before this, I have no confidence that it's going to work moving forward. And so I think our ability to be mentally and intellectually and emotionally nimble through this process is really going to be at the heart of our ability to really adapt to these conditions that are unprecedented for all of us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sharon, do you want to talk a little bit about what planning looks like at the University of Delaware right now and what you all are thinking about?
So I'd say we're very much in the midst of spring, trying to make sure that we're sustaining that academic continuity. As I mentioned, we're in our first week of classes. And of course, we're having, you know, the sort of support challenges that one would expect with our faculty, many of whom are teaching remotely for the first time. So there's a lot of support that's going into that, to making sure that they are being successful and their students are being successful. A lot of the focus, as I said, has been on the here and now, trying to make sure that our students that are either disadvantaged because of where it is that they might try to get internet access, or how it is that they may or may not have a laptop available to them. We're really focused on trying to make sure that they have what they need to be able to sustain their college career. I would say that we've been thinking about summer classes as well, because, you know, fall's a bit off, and we really, really hope that will be that will be our best case scenario, that we'll be back and we'll be able to meet face to face, but summer is coming before fall is, so planning has to begin for that immediately. I know that in talking with our academic technology services team and our Center for Teaching and Learning, our Center for Teaching Assessment and Learning, that we're trying to figure out how it is that we move from what was the immediacy of trying to get instruction online, teaching remotely, to how it is that we can make sure that we're addressing quality instruction now that we have more time to be able to prepare for the development of those courses. And I think that'll be a conversation that we begin to have with our faculty once we get past this sort of first week or two of challenge to the actual how is it that we make sure that we are keeping continuous operations through the current crisis. I know that we've made some decisions. We have a program for some of our international scholars where we tend to do the international program during the fall. We're looking at flipping that. So instead of students starting their activities at UD as freshmen in their international location, we're looking at doing that in the spring instead of the fall, which would be a very different change for us. And I would say we've been very closely looking at our admits. May 1st is the time when people would be giving deposits to come to the university. Right now, our admission requests are up, our deposits are up. That's something that we're tracking very, very closely to understand that. We of course would have expected that to happen before coronavirus because we were making so many forays into that area. But it's going to be interesting as we track and see what happens. Will it be business as usual? I don't think so, but I do think that there'll be at the end of us a great desire to be back and be able to be with each other physically, but then with a great capacity to do things online in ways that we've never done it before, which will be a sea change for an institution like the University of Delaware. So we're living in interesting times.
Absolutely, thank you. Jose, how's it look for you at Rhodes?
You know, very similar to what Sharon described, we are in our second week of remote learning, but still focused a lot on the support for the faculty and students and for administrative staff as well. But like Hampton, you're trying to focus a bit of energy on what things look like in the fall and just really just maintaining flexibility. And so it's not as much about what we'll do as kind of what options we want to have and how many different scenarios we want to be able to be agile with. We're concerned about admits, like Sharon said. We're looking at our first year student retention from last year, making sure that they want to come back, even having faculty reach out to them personally who have had them in their classes and say, I look forward to having you back and continuing our discussions. Those kinds of personal outreaches we are increasing. And the other thing we're trying to do is assess what this experience has done and meant to both the faculty and students. And so we have an Office of Strategic Initiatives that's working on taking the Heads survey that I think has just opened up and adding a few questions for our own community and just to dig into like how has this experience impacted teaching, learning, students individually or the dynamics between them, and kind of gleaning some good information from that, because I do think that we have some opportunities, no matter what the scenarios look like in the fall, to pull from this remote learning experience and use the best of in our fall semester. We have never taught online classes here. We don't even accept online or credits from online classes from transfers. So it was a wonderful opportunity for my team to kind of showcase some of what we know we could do and to be able to gently bring some of these other opportunities for faculty to use and to benefit from.
I don't think it was so gentle. It happened very quickly.
Yeah.
So
not for them.
Let's
for
segue
sure.
into that. No, let's segue into the next question because it's very related to what you were just talking about. As you look forward, and this is where you all put your analyst hats on, how do you see what's happened over the last couple of months and what's going to continue to happen for another couple of months impacting higher education broadly? Do you think that we'll see more real online education, or are many of the remote classes that we've put up going to come right back to being in person entirely? What are you thinking about in terms of what the long-term impacts look like they might be?
I can only speak for Rhodes at the moment. I think it's going to be a mixture, really. I do think we'll have a new appreciation for online tools and the ways in which faculty and students can use them to supplement their teaching and learning and their interactions. I know I ran into a faculty member in the parking lot the other day, and he's was thanking me for what we've done, but he said, I will never do in-person office hours ever again. And not because it was a hardship on him so much, but he explained to me that many of our commuter students were finding it hard to come into campus to meet with him during the specific office hours. And he just thought that this was just a great boon to those students to be able to give more of his accessibility to them. And so I do think there will be, just a mixture like anything else. It'll just sort of distribute out. But I think overall, there will be more of an openness to online learning in general. And we are already looking at, how we could maybe do at least one revenue generating online course in the fall. And I do hope that impact is there and that it doesn't just go back to business as usual, because it is an opportunity to kind of enhance and expand.
Great. Hampton, what do you think?
I think building on what both Jose and Sharon have both said, I think it's going to help us clarify what is really effective remotely and what needs to be face-to-face. And I think that in our environment, the online component of, or the online component of instruction is far more mature than the employee side of remote working. And so we have a lot of experience in online delivery. Over the past 10 years, we had a dean of e-learning that built our program from scratch and moved us into completely new territory. We participate in the Mississippi Virtual Community College. I think that what we'll see in that space is people that were sitting on the fence, instructors, faculty members who were sitting on the fence and did not want to get into online. Now that they are being forced into it, I think it's going to bring more people into that world. And I think, just like Jose was saying, there are going to be many situations of where faculty members have possibly not gone down a remote pathway in any way, and they get exposed to it and they think, wow, this is a little more flexible than I was thinking. Because I think we can get locked into our way of working. And even if we recognize that students may be wanting different things from us, the rate at which we move in that direction is, when conditions are good, honestly, it's probably more on our schedule than their schedule. And so I think that this is forcing the acceleration in that area. On the employee side, I have been incredibly impressed at how our workforce has rapidly mobilized to work remotely and to be really productive remotely. A lot of the tools were in place for that to happen, but we really didn't have remote workers. People would occasionally work remotely, but we never really endorsed that model at all. And now, if it works and people can be as productive, then that can change the conversation around what the relationship between the college and the employee can look like. So I think that in general, what we're going to see happening is it is going to help us better clarify what really works well in both instructional delivery and also in running the business. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I think we're seeing an incredible acceleration of what was going to happen already. It's just being compressed into a much shorter period of time.
Great. Thank you, Hampton. Sharon?
So I think there should be some significant impacts on higher education. I think that there's some things that we should be doing as a higher education community to push some national policy issues. So for instance, We've been working on creating these very high bandwidth connections to cloud services within our institution, and our need for having that to our campuses evaporated overnight. So what we need to be doing is getting back to the national conversation about broadband, affordable broadband in our rural areas. This has impacted some of our students in very deep ways that has required some of them to be on our campus during a time when we wouldn't want them to be here for their own health and safety, because their only capacity to have access to broadband is to be here on the campus. So that national conversation needs to re-begin, and we need to talk about not only having broadband everywhere, but having competitive broadband everywhere so that we can ensure that people have affordable access to these tools. Next, I think we're going to end up revisiting the conversation about student laptop requirements. I have been in a more elite perspective almost my entire career around there's no reason to put laptops in the hands of students unless the faculty are actually going to utilize those tools. They have access to our specialty labs. They have access to other kinds of things. That's no longer true. We have students that have fallen through the cracks because they're at risk. They're at risk because of their home environment. They're at risk because of their financial situation. And I think the conversation that we've been having about student laptop ownership is something that we should revisit as well in terms of higher education institutions. Like my colleagues have said, there's a very, very important conversation about, online learning. Let's continue that. Let's leverage what it is that our faculty have learned and our students have learned to this process, and make sure that we're doing this where it makes sense, whether it's more faculty doing office hours or really creating a wonderful environment and more opportunities for students to be able to participate in instruction. And I'm sure that's a conversation that we'll be having at the University of Delaware moving forward. I would also say this is a time to look at who we are as institutions and our institutional constructs. What does it mean to have quality instruction? What does it mean to be a land grant institution? What kind of opportunities should we be providing for students locally, regionally, and nationally? And how do we really make clear what it is that an institution of higher education does? This has deeply impacted our research mission here at UD, and understanding how we have research continuity as well as academic continuity is something that we're going to need to study moving forward. Hampton talked a little bit about workforce, and I would say I've had my team pressing me for information about telework, flexible work for a long time. And we're at a institution where people would embrace that, but I don't know that we really understood as leaders that this was so very possible for us to do. And I think that as we think about workplace flexibility and teleworking, that this is going to be a sea change as well in terms of how we deal with spaces on our campuses, and how it is that we allow our workforce to be working from home or working remotely or working from wherever it is that they work. Because I'll say, I've been doing a lot more work from home than I did in the office. So, and I can tell you that we have what we call a Barney board. It's an electronic duty roster that we have that we sort of stole, that we call it the Barney board from the Barney Miller duty roster TV show. So that's dating a really bad way. But, we've got one person that's coming in on a regular basis who's running our data center, but people are logging in at 7 o'clock, 7:15 in the morning. It's really amazing to see the level of contribution and work and commitment and support, the dedication that our workforce has to serve this institution in every way possible during this crisis. And I think that's going to represent a sea change in terms of how we work moving forward.
Thank you.
I agree. Yeah.
Just to reflect for a second. What I'm hearing from all of you is really interesting in that this is a pressure test really for our institutions on all these fronts, and we're finding some places where we're excelling and some places where it's a struggle. And I think if every institution can take the learnings as you all are and apply them, I think we'll start to see a shift in some of these areas in smart ways, because we're learning as much as we can. I think that's the great thing about our institutions, and we like to learn about ourselves as we go through this process. So I'm encouraged by what I hear and the things that you all take away from this and start to apply back to your institutions. And I think we as a community talk about ongoing. I want to shift a little bit. And Hampton and I, earlier in the week, or might have been last week, we're having a conversation, and he mentioned it again here. One of the things that he was so happy about, some of the things they had done in the last couple of years that enabled this to be okay. A lot of the tools and techniques that have been put in place. And to reflect back a little bit, I think it's important for us to say, hey, we did these things, and hey, they paid off in a way that maybe we didn't even understand when we did them. So I'm going to ask each of you to kind of, if you could reflect on that a little bit and think about what is the work we've been doing, whether it's moving to the cloud or specific tools or more online education that have really paid off for your institution. Jose, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, this has been on my mind so much lately because particularly under financial, pressures, there's a sense that maybe we should move to kind of like maintenance only and just operations and less innovation and less enhancements and things like that. But this experience has really made me feel like the opposite is the only thing that will get you what I now have started calling intrinsic business continuity, just a kind of continuity that comes from what you do through your strategy that makes continuing possible, as opposed to like thinking about just the point of disaster. So we're so happy that we have, for a long time, we have been working on virtual desktops, desktop pools for the sciences, for statistics, for a variety of different disciplines. And those have come in really important in terms of students and faculty accessing their lab environments, so to speak. And just things like moving to a voice over IP system that allowed us to transfer all our calls to cell phones and to our homes and put up conference bridges quickly. All of that just made a tremendous difference in terms of the foundation that we started from during this crisis, as opposed to the rungs that we had to reach to get just to level set. So I think more than anything, and I have to credit my team for that, because they have been here a lot longer than I have. Many of them are Rhodes alums, and they are always thinking ahead. Even when you think, well, do we really need that? They're thinking about strategy, and they're thinking about foundationally what could make us stronger. So I believe in it. I'm a believer.
That's great.
Yeah.
Hampton, what do you think?
So we've always taken a long-term view. I will build on the word Jose uses, investments. We are a very resource-constrained environment, but we think about the financial resources that are available to us, not as spend, but as investment. And over the past few years, we've done more things that, again, we were taking a longer-term view on where we believed things were headed. But with this acceleration, suddenly these challenges have shown up, and the tool set is here to meet those needs. And I would key in really on three specific things. None of them seem that significant. They just seem like what you should be doing anyway. One of them is we're an Office 365 environment. That's not that special. But for several years now, we've really been pushing this concept of the digital office. And so several years ago, I stripped down my work environment to where my goal was to be able to maintain the same level of productivity wherever I was with either my laptop or my tablet, period. And I was very much a binder person. I had notebooks, just page after page, and that's how I kept things organized. So we started preaching to all new employees. We started sharing with students during orientation. Use OneDrive for your individual storage. To departments, get your content in SharePoint. Start using OneNote for the things that are around your office. And people have really, really moved into those environments. And so when you've moved into those environments and you're comfortable with them, it makes no difference where you are. And so we're not having to do crash courses on how to manage your content in a remote setting. A lot of that work has already been done. Another area where we made some significant investments had to do with laptops for faculty members. We've had this view for a long time that if a faculty member today has a device in their office and there's one in the classroom, how could we potentially shift this to where they have one laptop that can serve them in their office, their classroom, and their home environment? And so being able to immediately purchase and distribute hundreds and hundreds of laptops was financially not within reach for us. So we were the recipient of a 5-year PBI grant, and we're in year 4 of that right now. And so in year 1, we began buying anywhere from 100 to 150 laptops or tablet surfaces and offering them to faculty members. They could choose which one they wanted. And the idea was, again, readiness. But now we're in a situation where there are hundreds of these devices that are out there, and suddenly we ask faculty members to pivot to online if they were not online already, and suddenly this tool set is in place. And so there's not been a lot of scrambling on the faculty side to get device ready, if you will. We already have that in place. And so the thinking was, if we could use this grant money to get us where we needed to be, then institutional funds could sustain us as we move forward. So that was a big win. And then the one that is probably harder to quantify on a day-to-day basis, but I think really plays itself out right now, is the concept of the relationship, specifically the positive relationship. And within IT, the culture within IT and expanding out to the institution as a whole is we're here to partner with you. We are here to help you solve your challenges. We want to hear from you. We don't have all the answers, but we are open. And I've always encouraged the staff to continue to make deposits in the relationship bank with all of our user community, because the withdrawals are inevitable. But the more deposits that are made, the more strength that we have. And I would say that this pivots to the vendor side as well. I began a huge cloud push about 5 years ago because I began to see we don't really have to focus on basic availability of services anymore. You don't have to buy the hardware and put this and that on it and put it in your data center, and then you hit enter and it says ready, and so we've done our part. That era is over. So as we have shifted to where we're paying someone else to provide that availability, I've encouraged all of the leaders in IT to invest in the relationships with our partners and make sure that we are relationship ready throughout the entire tech environment at the college. And so that's in place. And so we were not scrambling for, oh, we need this, who do we go to? We immediately knew who was on our team. And that has really been business as usual for us for several years now. Now we're really starting to see the fruits of that. So there's not been any specific thing that we've done that's really been that innovative or transformational. But when you start to put these pieces together, you see that you've built these capabilities that suddenly you can dramatically scale the capacity of them with hardly any changes. And then you feel like you've really honored the true value in the digital technologies. You've given them an opportunity to do what they're really best at, and that is scale rapidly.
That's well said,
Great.
Hampton. Thank you. Yeah.
It is. Sharon, up to you.
So I want to reiterate something that Hampton has talked about, which is that kind of collaborative approach, the communications, the transparency. I know within the past 2 years that we have focused very much on establishing good relationships with the IT leaders across campus, and part of our university response is that we're meeting twice a week with those groups across campus who are partners with our organization, and how it is that we respond to this, whether it's helping our workforce or helping our students or handing out laptops or whatever it happens to be. So that's a very important collaborative activity. I would say communications and transparency with our partners across campus. I just convened a meeting with our deputy provost and our vice provost for faculty affairs and our dean of students, with our chief information security officer and our academic technology group, along with the communications and marketing team, to understand how it is that we're going to respond to some very disturbing Zoom bombing incidents that have happened on our campus. And you can't really respond effectively in a crisis if you don't have those relationships built already and can just call on those people and say, look, I got to have a meeting an hour and a half right now, and they trust you enough to know that you're not doing this for some ridiculous reason, but that you're convening them because there's something that's very important that's happening. I'll talk a little bit more about other processes that have been put in place. I've been at University of Delaware for a little over 2 years, and the first focus was on the organization itself and the leadership team. And we built a really great team. We understood what our gaps, we understood how it is that we needed to reorganize to be a modern and effective IT organization. And we're really showing over the past 3 weeks the fruits of having done that tough work around what we should be to serve the institution and serve higher education as a technology group. We've made enormous progress in things like project management and service management and change control, and even how it is that we talk about planned and unplanned outages. That practice has served us well in this crisis environment, and I'm so pleased that we made those investments in those maturity processes as an organization, because they've allowed us to be more effective during this time. Even having invested in security and a security-aware community, they understand what it means. I've noted that some institutions have put in two-factor authentication during the crisis. That's something I think that's very difficult for a community to understand. But because at University of Delaware we've been doing this for a while, they understand the importance of, why we need to do something about Zoom bombing, or why we have two-factor authentication in place. So the technologies are important, but the practices around those technologies and what we do with them within the institution are pretty critical as well. I mean, clearly the move to cloud services has been something that has impacted us greatly, from having consolidated on one cloud learning management system. We did a site license for Zoom, thank God. Software as a service tool, our web accessibility efforts, so that even when we're in this challenging environment, our students that have accessibility considerations are being cared for, because we had made that investment as an institution. So yes, the technology is important, but our maturity practices are important too, and our leadership team and how we organize ourselves is critical as well.
Very well said. I'm impressed with all of your thoughtfulness around the people side of this. I've often said relationships are the currency of higher ed. and Hampton put that very well. And I think you all have shown that through this crisis. I think it's amazing. We do have a couple of questions that Chris has that came in through the question box. Chris, you want to tee up the questions?
Sure, thank you. The first one that we have says, I understand the current focus on faculty enablement to maintain academic continuity, but how are institutions thinking about student communication and engagement beyond the classroom, as in services like Student Life?
If you don't, so our vice president of Student Life has been very engaged in this because we're deeply concerned about the health of our students, their anxiety, their mental health through this process as well. So we've tried to make sure that we're communicating with our students wherever they happen to be, and that our support services are around and available to them via our Student Life team. And our student affairs team. You know, certainly we don't have access to the esports facility anymore, but we want the students to know that we're still there for them for every aspect of their success at the institution.
Great. Anyone else want to comment on that one? Hampton or Jose?
Just, I mean, very similar with us. In our cabinet meetings, we have daily cabinet meetings. Our Vice President of Student Life is very concerned both about the students on campus and those off campus, what their experience, their senior experience was like. There's a lot of focus on the communication for and within the class of 2020, so that we can really lift them up and honor them at the time that was, you know, kind of their last hurrah in their student life. So I also think just the additional, in my own talking to the few students that are on campus and asking them about the online experience, you know, some of them really like it and think it's easier for them. And I think there's some opportunity there to involve students more in the teaching relationship, or the kind of flipping of classrooms than we have thought to do in the past face-to-face. But yeah, students are very much on our radar.
I would say that in our environment, we have really worked to be very, very regular in our communication to our student population. We have an incredibly diverse population of students, and we have erred on the side of over communicating and attempting to share as much detail as we can, and even at certain times sharing uncertainty and acknowledging that we do not have all the answers, but that we're actively working to maintain as much continuity as possible. So I think that on the communication front, we've been very strong with the communication that's been coming out of the institution. I think where we have to be very mindful now is what's coming back to us, and make sure that we're really listening and really making sure that we're hearing what our students are saying, and that we don't in any way get fixed into our own ideas about how things should be, because we're all seeking routine and rhythm, and it's just what humans do. And we've got to be careful that we do not create a new routine or a new normal that is not as aligned as it can possibly be with as many of our students as possible. And so I think the driver behind that is our ability to listen and internalize and really shape the direction of the institution moving forward with that as input.
Great. Thank you. Chris, one last question.
Okay, and we do have a few more, so we will get answers for each of those questions and send them out to the respective people that have asked them. So the last question we'll go with is, I'm curious, with the current climate and emphasis on distance learning, Will there be an investment in the summer months on technology? Correct me if I'm wrong, but at times summer can slow down for universities, but not sure it's different now. What are the top distance learning apps that you see universities using? So a combo question for the last one.
Who wants to volunteer? Go ahead, Hampton.
I would say in the case of Hinds, our experience in distance learning and online learning is really paying off now in terms of we do not have a lot of gaps in the portfolio. Now, there would be obvious things where some kind of physical class that seems hard to take online, welding, for example, that is going to take a little work. But overall, the movements that we've made into online learning over the past few years and really building out that tool set, we're not struggling right now with a lot of gaps in that area. So more of the long-term investment approach is really paying off for us. So we're not facing a steep uphill climb in that area this summer, fortunately.
And you're still going to go live on Workday this summer, right?
Yeah, that's another thing. We are in the midst of a Workday deployment right now, and we intend to go live on platform on July 1. And it's interesting, the night that the message went out about the changes with the college, my very first thought was how this is going to impact the project. And I want to say to anyone that's listening how proud I am of the entire team at Hinds. They have doubled down on their efforts to keep this project moving. And so in the midst of all this challenge, we've got 35 people who are at home right now working on the Workday implementation. So we feel fantastic about the timing of this, going live 7/1, getting the deeper visibility into the business side of the institution. The relevance of this could not be more significant than it is right now.
So
Great.
I think
Congratulations.
for summer,
Go ahead, Sharon.
we'll continue with a lot of the tools that we're using. Canvas is our learning management system, software as a service tool, Zoom, and we've got, record captioning capability. We did expand some services with regard to an engagement tool that was used in our learner school, which we've expanded across the university, called Yellow Dig, which is more of an engagement platform. I think where we will begin to reevaluate is one for summer. Again, as I think I mentioned before, we want to be focused on let's really design for quality rather than design for remote, for sustainability. The next step is really going to be thinking about how we make sure that the courses are high quality. And then I would say that we may end up reevaluating some of the tools that we have for their sustainability. If we've had trouble captioning, if we've had trouble making sure that recordings are available in a timely way, we may end up reevaluating product. I know we ended up leveraging and expanding our software as a service tool, which we only did in a way that will carry us through the end of the summer. So if we have to carry further into the fall, we may need to make an additional investment in licensing. We've built the architecture. It's just a matter of how long will we need it and for how much. To Hampton's point, things like art conservation and dance are a little bit difficult, especially some of our labs, to translate into the online environment. So I think that many of those faculty who will teach those courses are looking forward again to the proximity of face-to-face instruction. But those are things that we may need to think about if we're in an academic continuity situation again.
Great, thank you. Well, I can't say thank you enough to the three of you for putting yourselves out there for our community to talk about what's happening and what you're thinking about in the coming months and what successes you've had. Great conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Chris, anything to wrap up?
Just another thank you for your expertise, everyone. We have really enjoyed a very robust discussion. And as I said, we will, if we did not answer your questions during the webinar, we will put those out to our panelists and respond to you via email. For those of you that don't know, Tambellini has created additional free resources that are available to all higher education institutions. You see that on your screen now. And including 30-minute free sessions with our analysts at no cost. So we wanted to make sure that everybody knows that we're here to assist and we are available. So thank you everybody, to our panelists and to our attendees. Thanks for joining, and we hope that you are all well. Have a great day.
Thank you all.